Fantastic. So let's kind of take a look at that presentation, and we are going to begin today. So our presentation is about really showcasing for you all the thought processes on going through how you should evaluate whether or not your business is ready for AP automation or could use AP automation. So we're going to talk about why bother, why go digital. We're going to then move into talking about what are the requirements, how to identify what you need in an organization. We're going to talk about evaluating different solutions, and then we're going to talk about that whole implementation process. So number one is, let's talk about why go digital. I want for you to understand a little bit about what kinds of business issues are plaguing companies that really prompt them to consider AP automation. And what you're seeing here on the screen are really the top 6 reasons why companies want to adopt AP automation in some way, shape, or form. So let's take a look. And I would love for you to participate via chat. And I've got Sari with me today on chat, kind of reading through some of your answers. But take a look. Why go digital? Are you experiencing a need to have accessibility, easy accessibility to all documents and no longer having to go to a filing cabinet? Is it that your organization or your customers, I understand we have a mixed audience here today, that you really are driven by wanting to streamline manual business processes? It could be that you're growing without adding headcount or needing to grow without adding headcount. And part of that strategy would be to minimize data entry, thereby driving productivity. It could be that you need to automate the distribution of documents. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but what I mean by that is to be able to send out not only AR invoices, but also to be able to send those out with supporting documents. Lastly, you may want to be able to or need to simplify audits, and that's really critical for companies, having the right documents available to the right people at the right time. All right. You know what? Actually, before I move over, I want to just give you one more chance to vote, right? Just within the chat there, if you don't mind, which is most prevalent for you and your organization. And you see the letters up there. We put those up there just to make it really simple for you to identify, which one is most meaningful for you. All right. So Sari, hopefully you were able to take a look at that. Were there any kind of synergies amongst A, B, C, D, E, or F that you can think of? And we'll actually maybe just regroup at the end as well and take a look at that. All right. So to make things simple, I love to make things simple for people. Just take things that are very complicated and distill it down to simple ideas. So in your mind, whether you are a customer or whether you are a reseller helping customers, I think it really boils down to these 3 kind of areas. And this is to determine whether or not that AP automation is the right fit for you. So number 1, are you touching, moving, and filing documents? Even when I think about that, I kind of feel this in my body about touching documents, running to a filing cabinet, right? It really brings up this whole vision for me. Are your approval processes manual and inefficient? And what happens there if they are, right? Things are getting lost in the process and creating more work for people. The last one is, do you have to have access to critical data and information to support a remote workforce? So again, just another element of, if these are things that you are plagued with, you may be a candidate for AP automation. All right, let's talk a little bit about the benefits. I think that these are really critical because as you start reflecting in your organization about, okay, where are we going to take our organization? What processes are going to be, the most amount of, or provide the most amount of probability of adopting automation? There is a backdrop, and it's always going to come back to, is it a soft dollar savings? Is it a hard dollar savings, or is this kind of supporting our strategic initiatives? So here on the screen, you're seeing 3 different pillars. And with any kind of document management and business process automation, I think that the benefits really fall in these buckets. And for you as an organization, you can kind of look at your organization and see, all right, what are we trying to achieve? And this all is kind of setting a backdrop for, setting up a budget for AP automation. All right, so cost savings. You can kind of ask yourselves and start building your own ROI equation with these. How much are you spending in offsite storage? Are you looking at moving offices, and what would that reduction in square footage be with filing cabinets? What are you spending in paper and courier costs? So you can kind of see, those financial equations that can be asked behind these pillars. Time savings. We're going to talk about this in the next kind of section, but how much time is being spent in these various areas: searching, filing, copying, doing data entry, approvals, remote access. So time always equals money. And if your strategic initiative is to grow without adding headcount, then we want to really look at what are those areas that we can drive productivity, save time, do more with less. I really like the strategic initiatives as well. These are really at the C level. And so companies are trying to think about, how do we grow our business? How do we grow without adding additional staff? And then we can start looking at driving cost savings with early pay discounts, avoiding late fees, better supporting an audit, having better internal controls and disaster preparedness as well. So another pop quiz for you. I'm dying to know, just for you guys, and maybe use the chat as your way of responding, signs that you might need automation, right? Do you have departments with manual document processes, right, where documents are coming in and needing to be routed for some kind of communication and approval? Is your growth strategy, such that you have multiple offices? Either right now you have multiple offices or you're growing to add multiple offices. Look around, right? Is there tons of paper everywhere? Do you have off-site storage? And is it really critical for those remote users to have easy and yet remote access to documents and processes? All right, next, we're going to go into identifying your requirements. And identifying your requirements is really critical because this is the best way to, manage whether or not your project is successful. So we want for you to be able to not only define your goals, but part of that is to be able to map your existing AP processes, mapping out what you're doing today with an eye towards what's inefficient and where is it broken will set a wonderful backdrop for you to calculate, what is the cost of doing business manually. That obviously is going to translate into what should you be setting as your budget. And also, as you start articulating your very specific business requirements, that will also help you differentiate between various solutions, not falling into just a features and functional kind of, show, if you will, but really focusing in on what solution specifically addresses your individual requirements. And that really, I think, is the ultimate goal. All right. And then we'll talk through some of these other areas as well. Are you needing a system that is deeply integrated with your particular ERP? Is OCR going to be important to your particular organization to be able to save on that data entry side of things, and more. So let's first talk about mapping your AP process. In my mind, this is fundamental. I understand that people say, well, we know what we're doing today and we're trying to leverage best practices, and that's fantastic. But if you don't know where you've been, right, it's hard to know where you're going. And in my mind, if you can map out what you're doing in these areas today, it is fundamental in being able to have a clear requirements to build the vision of where you want to go. As well, as you look through the step-by-step business process, you will have great clarity on what is the cost of doing business manually and being able to set up that budget. So I'm going to say that probably multiple times today because I do think it is fundamental in deciding, whether a company needs automation or not. And in this particular process, if you start looking at it, you will have great clarity of just the time and the financial implications. So just think about invoices are coming in. How are they coming in today? To whom are they arriving, right? How many times is someone touching an actual document? Are they still putting a rubber stamp and ink to that paper? And then what happens next? Are they writing in GL account codes? And then are they scanning it again back into email, only to route that for an approval process, and that person is printing it to put on their signature? That may be kind of a glorified example to make the point, but I think it's still very true in terms of looking at what are you doing today? How much time is it taking to get that invoice through the process? Is there an implication of, missing out on early pay discounts or paying late fees because things are getting lost in the process and now you have to scramble to kind of recreate things? So I think it's just important to note that there are so many possibilities of streamlining this process, especially with DocLink. And I want to be able to kind of empower you to choose the best solution for your organization. Right. Now, there's two distinct, AP flavors. So in the last three, we kind of talked a little bit about non-PO based invoices, where an invoice comes in, someone needs to code it, it needs to get approved, and then it's vouchered into your ERP system. In the PO side of things, it's very, very different, right? Because now we have potentially a requisition, a purchase order, a packing slip, and the invoice, right? And the most common thing that people are trying to automate is this whole two-way, three-way matching process, whereby in the manual world, we have documents, paper documents potentially, that are being physically matched up, and you're putting your eyes to that paperwork to see what matches and what does not. In an automated world, you're really wanting to leverage technology, OCR, DocLink workflow, in order to automate that whole entire process so that you can move your organization to managing by exceptions. So this is a very, very common area. And you know what, you might want to even chat back to Sari here on this one as well, just in terms of how many people, have two-way and three-way matching kind of critical to their organization. But you'll know if you're mapping out your business processes that you'll be able to clearly see, where are the gaps in the business process, or where is time being consumed, and how much time that you can actually save by bringing on automation. So in order to make a successful AP automation project, you need to know what those goals are. So have them crystal clear in your mind. And that way, when you start comparing solutions, you will know why you are choosing a particular vendor and what they offer, and also sometimes what they do not offer. So is it critical for you to have both two-way and three-way automated matching? Be really certain, that vendor is showing you exactly how that works for them. Is it simply approvals? Is that really the big issue that you're experiencing in your organization? It could be that you're trying to drive productivity by minimizing data entry, so no one typing or limiting that data entry, and allowing the machine to actually do some of that heavy lifting for you. And then, of course, self-service access. That's been prevalent, especially throughout the last several years, in, being able to connect the right people with the right documents at the right time in the way that they want to. Do they want to look at it via a mobile application? Do they want to look at it via the web? So a lot of different choices there. All right, so let's talk now about evaluating different solutions and what that may mean for you and how that might help you. So when we start looking at it, we want to be able to just highlight that there are many, many different deployment options that are available to you in the marketplace. And you have to determine what's going to be important for you. Are you needing a on-premise solution because there are certain requirements or government regulations that make that your only choice? Do you want something that is hosted? Do you want a cloud solution? So there's a lot of different choices there. Number two is talking really about, well, actually it's really number one on the screen, but the full cost transparency. So many times when I'm working with customers, there are vendors that may offer, a kind of like fast track deployment offer. And one of the benefits, I think, of DocLink in the marketplace, and that you should be considering as an organization, is making sure that you have full cost transparency, so that you understand exactly what you're getting in the first deployment, and then anything else that may be coming down the road. So if you're not only looking at AP automation, but, does that AP automation include rules, so that you can route invoices based on various rules? Is it including that three-way matching? Is it including, the payment side of the house? And then what do you not get? So I think having all visibility into what the costs are, is really, really important. Licensing comes up all the time, and I think having clarity on the licensing is important also. Is it a subscription-based? Is it perpetual? Is that still important to you, where you're buying the software outright and then just paying a modest annual fee? Is it based on concurrent user, or do you have to have every single user set up in the system? These are all, different requirements as well. Does your vendor of choice have, a solid relationship with your reseller? Is it well supported by the reseller? Do you have 24/7 support? So these are all kind of similar things that you can think about in terms of embarking on an AP automation project, and I want to make sure that I'm making the very best selection that I can. All right, so some considerations for yourself. I get this many, many times. If I'm sitting in a discovery call and we're kind of mapping out business processes, and then people will say, I really want to make sure that this is scalable, not just to AP, but down the road, I also want to be able to deploy this in HR or legal, or I'm a manufacturing organization, and actually really it's the quote to cash side of the house that, I also want to focus on. So understanding for yourselves and making sure that you've talked with other departments in terms of, are you just looking for AP automation, or is this something that is more enterprise-wide? That's really, really important. Know that for DocLink, which is our application, it does indeed support an enterprise-wide requirement. You can start in any department that you like, but of course, you're able to then expand and extend the solution as you need to. Next kind of pillar is the security. So is it part of your direction that you want your users to only have access to the documents that are, that they've given express security rights to view? If you have an enterprise-wide document management need, then of course you're going to want to decide, who can access what documents over what period of time. How about the integration? Integration is critical, because having a solution for AP automation in an enterprise-wide application that can not only utilize the ERP data to index documents, but push and pull data right from the application is really, really important. That's part of, streamlining your data entry vision. And then also viewing documents right from within the application. That becomes really, really critical, because most users are wanting one distinct application to utilize, versus having to physically log in different places. So that can be really important to people. And accessibility. It's funny, yesterday I was talking with one of my prospects on the phone, and mobile access was really, really critical to them, just because of the way that their users were dispersed around the country. And so for them, being able to really look at a mobile application and view documents and do their workflow moves was really, really important. All right, so we're kind of getting down to the home stretch here, and then also we'll be starting our Q&A session shortly. But I wanted to talk a little bit about implementation success and what are those big pillars in terms of making sure an AP automation solution is thoroughly implemented, and we're driving towards those project goals, and ultimately it's a success for your company. So number one is have clear outcomes. So we've seen this kind of, thematically throughout the presentation. Have clear goals so you know what you're driving towards. Be critically clear on those business processes as well, so that you know what are those issues that you're trying to solve and how does that new system need to be set up. Number two, have an executive sponsor. This is really, really critical because we need someone, at the top of the organization to be driving these projects through to the end. And you can certainly leverage not only your software vendor, but also your reseller and those team members internally to make sure that the momentum is held high, to see the project through. Have a clear project plan. Understand the exact phases and how much time is going to be spent with you, as a end user, or even as the reseller in order to make sure that project is going to, be successful. Make sure that there's a very thorough project plan, et cetera, and it's mapped out so you know when your time is being utilized. I love this next one. Whoops, let's have a little mouse happy there. Challenging your business processes. So it may be that your organization is appropriate to just simply say, let's take what we're doing now and move it into a software solution. But many companies are saying, oh, that's great, but we want to drive productivity, and really, really make sure that we are moving our organization forward. So let's make sure that we have that vision of what you're doing now, what are those issues, that you're trying to solve, and what is the to be. So I like that very simple kind of metaphor because when you do it that way, you've mapped your business processes, you've articulated, why these are issues or problematic, and then the to be, really becomes very simple, and it keeps everyone on the same page. Number 5, fast track versus scoped. This again is a really important feature because many times I've seen companies go through a fast track deployment and it's a very, very low cost, right? Because we're trying to squeeze the fat out of the perception of that initial buy, but then the customer is not sure on what the longer term, costs are of that project. So in my world, I just like to say, know all those costs that are up. Know all costs up front. Your first phase, your second phase, your third phase, those can be scoped to some degree and make sure that you've got a clarity on what the investment is overall. IT. It is not terribly unusual that either the end users, or even the C-level folks will blaze the trail, but we really, really need to involve IT as well to make sure that the infrastructure is in place and that their understanding of, what this new application is going to mean to them, from the IT perspective as well. And it's all about communication. I think communication is key. It's about, setting the right expectations, all working towards the same goals, and then executing on really, really clear deliverables. All right, so I think that naturally moves us over into the chat portion. Well,
hey, great job, PL. I do have a few questions that came in privately. So I have this one. Do different vendors offer different levels of integration with an ERP, and how would you evaluate that?
Yes, that's it. Woo, I almost fell out of my chair. No, it's a great question. And it's a great question because this all stems back to what we were initially talking about, which is what are your goals? What depth of integration do you need? It is going to be critical to your organization. And then you can start evaluating, well, what integration does everyone offer? Are they allowing you to view documents right from within the windows of your ERP solution? Do they allow for transactional updates, right, to be reflected back in your document management application? Can you push and pull data between those solutions? Can you repurpose, the data that's in that ERP solution? So there's a lot of different elements that go into that. So great job on the person that asked that question. And let me know if there's any follow-up to that.
Okay, and then can I use my document management solution to automate more than just AP?
Yes. So we see this a lot. There's a lot of AP automation, vendors out there and stories, right? But I think when you're selecting an application, it's really important to think about the long-term vision. Wouldn't it be beautiful if you could store everything in the one solution that you've bought for AP? So think very broadly. Anywhere where you're experiencing paper-based bottlenecks or trying to route documents between employees for, approval or communication, creating documents, like a requisition or an expense report. So there's a lot of possibilities in extending DocLink, well beyond AP automation. I think I'm thinking back on the last couple customers, the quote to cash side of the equation becomes up, quite frequently, in any kind of like synthesizing manufacturing documents by job order. So a lot of possibilities in that arena.
Excellent. I've got one that wants to break down two-way and three-way matching again.
Okay, you got it. So, we're here to educate and help companies, but I quickly and easily slip back into, go DocLink. But so two-way matching is when maybe it's a services-based invoice where we're matching just the invoice back to the purchase order for that services. Three-way matching is when we have three documents. So it's the invoice to the packing slip to the invoice. And so you'll know in your organization, are you non-PO only? You don't even use POs? Do you do two-way matching or do you do three-way matching? In any matching, there's a big issue with the manual business process or the manual time it takes to match up those documents, check line by line by line, does everything match? Does it match according to what was on the packing slip? Does it match to what was on the purchase order? It's a time element, so we want to be able to automate that. So you'll know in your organization whether or not you do two-way and three-way matching. And then the second question is how painful is that in your organization? And then the follow-up is make sure that your vendor that you're looking at provides automated two-way and three-way matching. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now for the automated matching. I get so excited.
So to follow on, what other common business processes do you see people wanting to automate?
Oh, yeah. So we just talked about
examples.
You got it, Sari. So we just talked about, two-way and three-way matching, but let's talk about the quote to cash side of things. So the whole thing about document management is, number one, synthesizing documents together so that when you go in to either support an audit or you need to search for something, you can say, hey, listen, show me all documents by a work order or sales order or customer PO, and it will pull everything together, right? So just keep that in mind as we talk about this. Next pillar is about workflow, and that is sending documents through some kind of workflow for approvals. So when we talk about where else can you use DocLink or where else, it's about, ask yourselves, what's in your filing cabinets? What are you routing through, business processes manually? And where are you trying to go paperless in your organization? So that's kind of my thoughts there.
Okay, great. I think we have about 1 more minute. So I'm going to ask you one more. Can a document management solution help me with auditing?
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. I have one customer, they were back east, and they suffered an audit and had a 6-digit penalty. So when we worked with them, it was more about, solving, number one, all the documents that were in their boxes, and down in the dungeon. I'm sure everyone has special words that they use for their storage. But absolutely, you can, number one, make documents easily accessible for your auditors. You can set them up with a very specific user ID. You can quickly get documents and send them out. So lots and lots of possibilities on supporting an audit. No more banker's boxes in your office. Whew, delight.
Well, I think, PL, we are kind of heading to the end. So if you want to go ahead and sign off with the folks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. It was just delightful having this opportunity to present with you today. I hope it was educational, and please continue the chat in the booth and all of the various networking sessions that we have available today through DynamicsCon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.